Okay, well, welcome to today's Legal Operations Community event. It's fantastic to have you all here. Today is one of our most important topics. What is the market actually looking for in its legal in-house counsel? This topic affects us all personally and provides a proxy view of the entire in-house legal industry, where so much is happening and where so many changes have not yet fully played out. So we really hope that this session will give you what you need to proactively go out and meet a staggering amount of opportunity that is becoming increasingly present for the in-house space. Today's presenters will be myself stepping in for Matthew Glynn, whose voice has died a death this morning, and so has handed the reins over to me to present the GLS view, and Mr. Aaron Faith from Marsden Recruitment. We'll give a fuller introduction to Mr. Faith in a couple of minutes. Before we get going, some 3 housekeeping points, if I may. Firstly, we're going to keep all attendees on mute. This is to ensure the audio quality of the presentation is fine. If you do have any questions, please either send them through the chat function or throughout the presentation, or at the end of the presentation, you can use the raise hand functionality, and then at that point we'll take you off mute so you can ask your question in audio format. And with that, we'll get going. So, what are we going to be talking about today? Firstly, we're going to provide a quick snapshot of the changes in the in-house legal industry. We'll introduce you to our guest speaker, Mr. Aaron Faith. Aaron will share with you some of the key in-house recruitment trends that he has noticed in the market over the last few years. We'll be analyzing the 3 main categories of change that have been driving the in-house legal industry recently. We'll offer you our view of what is going to be the most attractive characteristics of in-house leaders going forward. We'll pull our discussion together with some conclusions, and then we'll throw things open to the floor for some Q&A. So, let's start with some notes on a rapidly changing in-house legal industry. As you know, GLS spends most, if not all of our time helping in-house legal teams improve their performance and career outcomes. So with that, we've been exposed to a few hundred clients from around the world. And with that, we've received some really interesting insights or an insider view of what are the trends that are affecting the in-house legal industry. Our assessment of those trends is that we believe that we're in the middle of a very powerful change cycle, that the new norm of what life is like for an in-house lawyer is being established, but is far from being settled. The in-house industry has, over the last 5 to 10 years, been heavily impacted by 3 powerful forces. Firstly, external operating conditions, such as the factors of an abundance of IT and new generative AI functionalities. There are macroeconomic shifts and a big move to a digital economy. Secondly, we think that the internal environment has been substantially revised in the sense that businesses are changing what they're expecting and requiring from their in-house lawyers, how those in-house lawyers will operate, and what is the value that those in-house lawyers are expected to generate. Finally, personal reflection. What the individual lawyer wants from their life and how life as an in-house lawyer can be supported. We'll unpack these 3 forces in today's session, as they are the driving changes in recruitment patterns in the in-house community, and they're the force that are driving change in our industry. Now, whilst the impact of these forces is not yet fully played out, what we can say is that the era of the isolated legal department ivory tower, that era when in-house lawyers were just scuttled away in a dark room to do the legal stuff and were never challenged or questioned, is firmly at an end. The new norm that now appears to exist in the market really emphasizes a more holistic and multidisciplinary role for in-house lawyers, i.e. a role in which more commercial input and understanding is being emphasized. This new norm appears to be more challenging in some ways. That is, there is now a need to master a more diverse toolbox of technologies and skills. And of course, there's greater operating pressure in this new norm. Additionally, though, there is a staggering amount of opportunity for more diverse and rewarding and remunerative careers for in-house lawyers. So these are the themes that we'll be exploring today, and we'll be exploring those themes through the lens of trends that we are seeing in the in-house recruitment space and the essential skills that in-house lawyers will need in order to thrive in that space. So first things first, let's set the scene for the in-house legal industry by means of a report card that summarizes the key changes that we have noted over the past decade. So this report card does need to be qualified. There are obviously a lot of reporting metrics that we could have used, and we only had so much space on a slide to choose the ones that we thought were the most interesting. Secondly, these are general trends, which can, of course, obscure distinct trends that might be embraced by smaller demographics. But as a generalized report on the in-house community of the last 10 years, we would note that the role of the in-house lawyer is rapidly changing. The expectations on in-house lawyers by the businesses that employ them are now much higher than they were in the past. Operating pressures seem to be higher than they were historically. Job satisfaction is at best stable, but is often declining. Work-life balance, again, at best is stable, but is more often than not declining. Remuneration seems to have generally plateaued. Retention rates are often declining. Job stability is declining. The required skill sets of in-house lawyers are much broader, and career outlook is both, well, on one hand, less certain, and on the other, there's actually quite a lot of certainty. So this one is a jumbled report card to end with. Now, this view is what is our personal view at GLS. This is the view that we've gained from working alongside in-house lawyers and the heads of legal departments, specifically legal departments that were looking to optimize their team's performance. But what does one see when you view the in-house legal industry from the perspective of what does one see when you view the in-house legal industry from the perspective of an industry insider that is responsible for the movement of legal talent? Well, with that, we would like to introduce you properly to Mr. Aaron Faith of the Marsden Group. Aaron is a director of the Marsden Group. He specializes in senior level searches, specifically for the heads of legal and compliance leads. He covers an incredibly diverse geographical remit. Key mandates that he's worked on and continues to work with are Aramco, PIF, Marden, Johnson & Johnson, AstraZeneca, Cisco, 3M, etc., etc. Basically, the great and the good of the global MNC community. And Aaron is particularly well placed to give his insights today, as his background is as a commercial lawyer, and he has 7 years experience in that. So with that, I'd actually like to hand over to Aaron so that he can give us some of the key insights that he has seen on recruitment patterns in the in-house industry and what he sees in terms of talent movement within the industry. Over to you, Aaron.
Fantastic. Thanks ever so much, Nicholas. Nice to meet everyone this morning. I'm calling you from Montenegro, and lovely to be here. So look, I'm going to take you through a journey and then make it more specific. As you can imagine, my day spans from speaking to Australia and Hong Kong in the morning all the way through to the US at night. And the trends that I see are picked up through all the mandates that I do. So these are my observations over I suppose, a 3-year journey, starting from COVID, and then I'm going to break it down into the more specific key trends that I'm seeing at the moment. So in terms of, well, at one point, I'm sure all of us were worried about going out of business in some respects during COVID, and we wondered where the market was going to go. And it was only literally until January the 1st, 2021, that the floodgates just kicked off. And I have to say, recruitment in many respects has never been busier, but it started with private practice in particular. And of course, when you've got a busy private practice market, that gradually trickles into the in-house piece. Markets like the US were scorching hot, with firms paying up to 50% fees to find talent, bringing people in from Australia. In particular, the big US firms were hiring from Australia. We even had people moving to Magic Circle firms from India to London. All over the world, we were seeing this. It was a recruitment market like I'd never seen before, but it didn't quite cascade, as I'm sure everyone found, into the in-house space, because businesses were so uncertain as to what was happening, which led to everyone doing more for less, whilst the workload exploded. Now that's changed, and what we're seeing, generally speaking, the US is slowing down, the UK as well to an extent in terms of that hiring, and we're moving slowly from what was very much a candidate market to a more balanced client market, but that's still taking its time. And so if we look at the key areas, and just moving to the movement areas, there's lots of different areas in many respects, but certainly ESG is one that I'm seeing a lot of at the moment. Companies are, gone are the days where, one page at the back of an investor pack or the like. People are really focusing on this, and I'm getting a lot of mandates for that in the Middle East and in Europe in particular. Litigation is always there as usual. Technology, of course. Data privacy is a key one. Investigations, obviously, people looking for lawyers, particularly with, I suppose, the in-house experience now. And as lawyers, it used to be that you'd see people coming from different areas of the business going into investigations. Lawyers with that skill set are now very transferably moving around the world. And of course, fintech. In terms of the areas where, I suppose, generally speaking about sector, energy, oil and gas, renewables is still very busy. It was the case about 6 months ago. We were seeing that the VC space was booming. That's slightly cooled, as has utilities, public sector, and commodities. The hotspots at the moment still remain in the US, the UK, of course. In the Middle East, it is very, very busy, and particularly in Saudi Arabia, which is driving the whole of the region. And of course, Asia Pacific remains relatively buoyant in certain parts. Now, in terms of the effects of COVID and what that's done to the workforce, companies haven't replaced the people they've got rid of completely in many, many sectors. And people are now comfortable working from home and enjoying that flexibility, which of course means they've got more time in some respects to look, more privacy, and of course are comfortable relocating. And indeed, I do a lot of work in Saudi Arabia. 2 or 3 years ago, trying to get someone to move to Saudi Arabia was nigh on impossible. Now people are coming to me and saying that they want to move, they're happy to move. People are comfortable doing so. And in terms of the war for talent, yes, it's still there. Any of you that are recruiting teams, it's still a tricky market to hire good people, and it's still very competitive. People have more choice. People want more money. People want that flexibility. Gone are the days. Well, in my day when I started interviewing, I'd never ask if I could work from home or what the flexibility was. That's almost the first question that candidates are asking me now. Can I work from home? What's that policy? What's the flexibility? And we need to be aware of that, which I'm sure many of you all are. The other thing that we're finding is, of course, the localization of talent. Certainly, I still place many, many expats and their families around the world, but that all embracing belt and braces packages, they're changing. There's very few locations around the world. I mean, Africa has some, Saudi has certain areas where I would say they are hardship postings. Now, because of that, expats, they do demand more money, and companies are looking at localizing talent. I've seen this particularly in the Middle East, where the requirement to have a KSA national is, I would say, 95% of the time is what we're looking for. This is also the case in certainly the UAE, where we're looking for Arabic speaking talent. And of course, Singapore, Hong Kong, China are also looking for people that are native speakers and native to their countries. Now, this is understandable, but each country has different ways of training and different expectations, and we need to be aware of that as that talent is localized. In terms of diversity trends, well, there's many things we could discuss. The thing that I want to focus on is women in leadership, women in law. We're getting there in terms of where we should be. I think we've got some stats here about Australia, Europe, US, and KSA. And a blanket response is this: what we are finding is that whilst the stats for women in law are going up, particularly as you can see, I'm jumping straight to in terms of Europe, where we've got some really interesting stats. 60% of all lawyers in France are women. 72% of all accredited law students in the UK, back I think it was in 2021, are women. But the thing that's slightly concerning is seeing women in leadership positions and also staying in the law. And that's something that I think companies need to look at more. Now, of course, there's many factors that can affect this, but it's interesting that if we've got 72% of all graduates going in the UK to law school who are women, when are we going to see that start trickling through? And is that something that is relating to how companies and life in-house is causing that discrepancy? One anecdote that is interesting, and I was talking to Matt about this. Everyone assumes that the Middle East, in particular, has less women in law. I have to say that in the 13 years I've been based out there, I've placed more women, expats and local ladies, into senior positions than I have men, particularly in KSA. In fact, actually, I would say 9 out of 10 clients and multinationals that I speak to look for talented ladies coming through. And I have to say that it's been really refreshing to see. And the talent in Saudi Arabia in particular is fantastically good with the ladies coming through. I bring this up because most people think that's not the case. My experience of doing it day in, day out, that it really is. And it's great to see. In terms of leadership and salaries, look, people are more informed. An ever increasingly smaller world. Yes, candidates are more informed about what they want. They're not afraid. The key thing is they're not afraid to say it either. And we need to be prepared for that. Because of the fact that they've got this flexibility, they've recognized that when moving, that loss of that flexibility is a great risk. And I think employers are starting to become aware of that and being able to sell what they can do. But some clients are further behind than others. In terms of salaries, it did make me smile wryly when I saw Nicholas's slide. We are seeing the US shot up, the UK went up quite a bit, but does that cover cost of living and the extra work we're doing? Probably not. Has it changed that dramatically when you compare it over a 5-10 year period? Not really. And so again, if the salaries aren't where we want them to be, we still need to be thinking about what we can offer candidates to keep them and retain them. And it is slowing gradually, as we're seeing in the US and UK in particular. The Middle East is really interesting because whilst I think salaries are very competitive, particularly because of the tax situation, the benefits have almost gone. Gone are the days of full schooling. Gone are the days of big housing loans, etc. Now, that doesn't mean that it's not competitive there, but they really haven't raised that dramatically. Now, of course, there are certain companies that are paying more. Some of them are listed on my own on the introduction that Nicholas kindly gave. But at the same time, as a whole, they're pretty much plateauing and haven't raised dramatically in a 13-year period. when you compare to certainly the US or the rest of the world. Moving, shall I move on to the next slide, Nicholas?
Fantastic.
So why do lawyers move job? The question I ask all my candidates coming through every day. You won't be surprised though. Whilst we have a changing landscape, these things haven't changed that much. I did a seminar on retention recently with the ACC, and before I start on this, one of the things I want to, and I'm going to move on to retention, but I think retention starts right when you interview someone. So all these things here are things that we can think about. There's no rocket science here. It's things that we should refresh ourselves on daily. Are we doing this well? So if we take compensation, for example, well, it needs to be transparent. Is it easy to do that sometimes? But not really when you're looking at bonuses and performance and bandings. And I hope I'm not offending HR. They've got a difficult job, but their job is not easy to give that transparency. And it's not easy sometimes to reward people when they've done well. But at the same time, it doesn't mean we shouldn't try and do that and be fair and look to reward the people certainly that we want to keep. And I think the key thing is to go to them first. So if someone is doing well, they should be rewarded without them coming to ask you. Interestingly, if you want to save costs on my fees, the best way of doing that is giving them a slight bump, because my fees will be more than the bump itself. And I'm not trying to put myself out of a job, but most people, when you come to them and ask them what they want, reward them before they come to you, you'll find you pay less and they'll be happier. But of course, we do need to keep the market conditions but explain it to them. Talk to people sensibly about what is causing that and be as transparent as you can. Skills acquisition. Lawyers can't stop learning. We love it. We can't help it. I think it's ingrained from when we train. We keep going. We keep going. We keep going. It's amazing how giving someone education or training, etc., can also keep them to stay with you, and it keeps them sharp, and so we do need to think of that. Of course, budget is often challenging, but interestingly, if you speak to your HR, you can get good courses and discounts, or ask them to approach different universities if you can, because I've seen it where HR go in and get really good rates with universities, and having taught at university myself, I know that can happen. Uncertain career development. Yes, of course, uncertainty leads to people wandering. Be clear, be consistent, give feedback. Also be, I saw an interesting, had an interesting seminar on leading by kindness. Be open, be fair, and be constructive. People will respond to that, but try and understand their motivational levers, and also understand that motivational levers change on a daily basis. Every human does. Bad bosses. Well, it's interesting that, of course, bad bosses lead to a toxic culture, all these things. Now, often the case is that I find it's half of one, six of the other, half a dozen, six of the other. That's a very bad phraseology, but I think you know what I mean. But equally, how do you challenge that? How do you get around that? It is a significant factor. I think being open and frank if you've got a bad boss, or communication is key. But unfortunately, we still see it. The amount of times people leave jobs for bad bosses is, I would say, probably 60% of the time. Long hours, well, and working without a soul. Well, we're lawyers. This is what we do. Gone are the days where, unfortunately, we could, we would say that there was more work-life balance in-house. I remember a time when I was in practice, and a lot of people would move in-house because they thought wrongly that you'd get that work-life balance. That was not only the wrong way to look at it, but now it's certainly not the case. And I often see people working hours that are equivalent to private practice. If that is the case and your team are there, or they're working from home, of course, working from home has meant that people are plugged in more. Be understanding of that and look to assist them and make sure people unplug. Toxic culture we've caused and talked about. It's difficult for people going into a business to know exactly what the culture is, but working, if you're a manager, it doesn't need to be a hellish environment to get the best out of people. Metrics, for example, which I won't come on to, don't need to be a stick, but can lead to clarity. Personal circumstances is probably one of the things that we can't change as managers. Things happen. All you can do is be there for people. And I think the difficulty is that because we're very motivated and work hard, we often forget that sometimes people do have these issues. Create an environment where they can come to you, where you can support them. Equally, of course, you need to be very careful that people aren't pulling the wool over your eyes, but at the same time, you'll find that out if you have an open style of management. COVID, working from home. Well, look, the ability to work from home has created many opportunities. It's also created many opportunities for people to look around. But I think this is a must now, and all companies need to look at that. I'm sure that most of us here will be doing that. But if you're not, that policy, I mean, sometimes it's difficult because I've got one company that I work with where you can't work from home for security reasons. But assuming that's not the case, build that level of trust with your employees. I certainly do with mine. They work all over the world when they need to. And if you get the right people coming back to the hiring, they won't let you down.
Okay. With that, I think it's probably a good time to move on to the hybrid model in detail. Basically, the purpose of this slide is to emphasize some of Aaron's wonderful points. Specifically, these are extracts from the 2022 to 23 in-house legal market survey. As you can see, the work from home factor is now often determinative for a growing portion of in-house lawyers. It's a huge factor at all levels, and it can cut both ways. Location is not an issue, where hybrid is more acceptable, but it also means that some people are tending to stay where they're currently located. This particular statistic, or this particular survey, came from Australia, and it is focusing on the Australian market. But I think in this case, Australia can probably be seen as a reasonable proxy for the rest of the world. Let's offer some slightly more data-driven insights into these movement patterns. Specifically, Aaron, can I hand back to you so that you can talk us through your retention statistics in more detail?
Of course, yeah, no problem at all. So these statistics, to be clear, have been partly from our observations and pulled together from various reports. And again, they're meant to be a yardstick, not to be exact, as you can imagine. But yeah, a lot of, again, going back to bad bosses, toxic culture, people like to be respected. And, is it poor performance for the seniors in this? Yeah, I mean, it's external stakeholders. Yeah, it's very important. And many people that come to me feel, I suppose, disenfranchised and disengaged. You've got to make sure people are engaged, and respect and politeness and a number of other things will help keep people there. The hybrid model impact, well, companies do have that, where people have that flexibility, where people do stay. People like that. It's, as I said, I'm not going to go into it anymore, but 24% of employees feel unrecognized by their bosses, and that is often one of the things, because whether it's career objectives, aspirations, education, all these things, working from home, very key thing. Empathy. Yes, I mean, a lot of people come and feel that they're misunderstood. I feel I'm misunderstood sometimes, most of the time, actually. But it is important. Try and understand your employees and realize that their motivational levers change on a daily basis. Again, it's a tricky balance, but it is important. And get to know them. Strong onboarding. Yeah. It's amazing how many people get put off by coming into a business and feeling completely dropped in at the deep end. It does help. And it's not just the lawyer's responsibility or the team leader. HR need to be involved. If you feel that HR or there's a a problem with onboarding, you must say and take control of that process. You wouldn't believe the amount of people we lose at the signing of contracts, or even when they get there, pop out because of the fact that they're so unhappy with the way they've come into the company. Employee engagement, there's a lot of things we can do. That's, you know, 66, again, engagement is a number of areas that you can look at, but if you get it right, it increases the retention rates of about 66%, so we're told. But that engagement is a number of areas. You've got, again, understand the people, make sure that you're doing reviews, both from an internal and external perspective, and do reviews of yourselves as well. 70 dead-end assessment. So over 70% of employees are compelled to leave for the sake of career advancement. That's very true. At the moment, you know, whilst we're seeing growth, there's not always opportunities. Sometimes we can't help that, but at the same time, talk to them, give them other projects, do what you can to move people forward, even if they can't go to the next level, or the business may not be able to do that. Cashing out, of course, yes, 20%. People do look for a job, especially if there's a 20% pay rise. Generally speaking, 15% is good, 20% is is okay. It's like 15% is okay, 20% is good, 25% plus is very good. And we are seeing a war for that. Now, sometimes we can't actually help on that, but at the same time, the other aspects about engagement will. Corporate well-being. The better the well-being and the better things, or more things you do for the employee, the more people retain. It's amazing how much the small things matter, whether it's life insurance for dependents or healthcare for dependents or gyms. It doesn't cost as much. It will save you a lot of problems, but again, may not be in your remit because of what HR do, but flag it up. Poor training. Inadequate training accounts for 40% of resignations. That comes back to the onboarding piece, and also then continuing that training through. Think about it as managers, we're responsible for that. In the end of the day, if they get it wrong, the buck stops with you, and people feel disenfranchised if they're left out hanging out to dry. Millennials. I find this statistic interesting because it says 30% of millennials will jump ship for a better job. I find that with most people, actually. It's not just millennials. But what I will say is that, yeah, it's very uncommon now to see someone who spends 10, 15 years in an organization. Now, I'm actually of the view that 10 or 15 years in one organization, unless you see continuous career growth, is a good thing. But at the same time, we are be aware that people are moving quickly, and that will you need to change the way you look at it and the way that you retain them. That is not to say, however, that millennials are not resilient. In fact, I'm a big advocate of that. You find the right people, they will stay with you, and that's the key thing I come back to: is you want to retain people, get it right at the start. Not job security. Well, 2% decide to end their contract to find a more secure job. I'm not sure I agree with that. The amount of times that people, in-house is a tricky place sometimes. We all sometimes don't see that bullet coming, and people do get worried. Now, maybe I see it differently because of my prime region, which is the Middle East. And of course, if you haven't got a visa, you can't work here. But I think that certainly, you know, it's changed a lot since COVID. People do feel more secure, but a lot of the time, certainly at a senior level, I'm finding people that are worried about the security of their job. Now, again, can we control that? Not necessarily, but be aware of that. If there's changes going on and restructuring, as we always see in large businesses, make sure that your team are aware of what's going on and help them feel more secure.
Yeah, thank you, Aaron. That was some incredible data. And with that data in mind, thought it'd be helpful to unpack those external, internal, and personal drivers that are causing so much changes in the in-house legal industry. So those drivers broken into these three clear categories or themes. The takeaway observations are this: there are plenty of drivers that are affecting change within the legal industry. If we go through the external factors, we're looking at economic trends, technology, digital marketplace growing to a global scale, and the never-ending increase of, and now increasingly competing, international regulation. If we're looking at our internal factors, we're looking at those expectations that the business is putting on in-house lawyers, and that these are arguably in many cases slightly unrealistic expectations. A perennial issue being dealt with by in-house lawyers, which seems to be something that's going to continue in the future, is the fact that we need to do so much with fairly limited resources. Those workloads are growing, but the resources are not necessarily growing at the same pace. It is a new era of opportunities, often in many cases driven by digitalization. But digitalization does come with the double-edged sword of rationalization and the risk that that puts on our roles. So if we're going to look at our individual drivers, I guess a key issue that Aaron has flagged is increasing preeminence of work-life balance, or at least work and life location balance. We're increasingly aware of our options, and it's increasingly transparent what the financial outcomes of each of those options are. So none of these factors look like they're going to abate anytime soon. The in-house legal community is set for continued and profound change. The change is a process. And again, that change is a process that is a long way from being played out. So if we shift our focus, how can in-house lawyers capitalize in the light of these ongoing changes? Aaron, can I ask you again to give you a view on what employers are currently looking for when they're looking to recruit a leader for their in-house legal departments?
Certainly. Thanks, Nicholas. Just to start off with this slide, and I'll rattle through it, but when I take briefs, I've taken so many briefs over the years, as you can imagine. And everyone gives me different views of what they want. No one ever asks for someone that's got bad interpersonal skills, right? And so these points here, yes, they've changed a bit, but we are still looking for people. It's the energy, it's the resilience we're looking for. And I'm flagging that up because whilst these points are what people are looking for, they're not much change in many respects. They're just put in a different way, but I'll talk you through it. So of course, the business partner. Now, we want people that are going to integrate with the business, that get the business. And that actually is really interesting when people are coming straight from private practice. The models of most businesses, no matter how big, are not as complicated as the businesses that we work in. So to be effective, people need to be commercial and they need strong communication skills. The transformer, yes, of course, especially if you're in a leadership position. I'm doing a lot of this at the moment where we've got less time, more work, more pressures, less budget. Of course, people that have transformed, optimized teams, records of dealing with innovation, new technology, very helpful. And that proven track record is very important. And again, all stems from being a good business partner and understanding the business. Legal operations, of course, an ability to implement a legal operations agenda. Funnily enough, general counsels have been doing this in some way, shape or form through most of their career, but this now we're seeing many, many more roles like this, and very, very important for certainly leaders that can actually do that and transform the team. Team leader, of course, ability to lead the legal team and encourage continuous improvement. A lot of the stuff we talked about of bringing people forward and encouraging them and engaging them, you need that as a leader. And gone are the days where you can be siloed off, as Nicholas said, in an ivory tower. You've got to get about your team and the business. Value creation. There was some stats years ago done in relation to where does the legal team add value? And we are commercial. We are in if we're looking at a body, the corporate body, we are in every part of the business. We are the nervous system of that business. And we also, if you looked at the value add, most deals that fall over are because you haven't had reasonable, good legal advice. Make sure that you're telling your team and your business what value you are creating, Very important, and that people are looking for that to be demonstrated on CVs as the value add they've had, not just on a bottom line and risk management, but also the top line. Technology literacy, this is obviously coming up time and time again. It's a very interesting area, lots of different technology. People that understand legal innovation are key, and again, if people who've implemented systems, digitalization, change, that's something we're seeing more of and being asked for. And crisis management, this one made me chuckle because, of course, what do we do as lawyers? We're always dealing with a crisis, right? In fact, actually, one of the reasons people don't like us is they have to come to us when we have a problem. But how we deal with that and that skill set for that is vitally important. And clients are crying out for people that are good under pressure and can find solutions to problems. Thanks, Nicholas.
Thank you very much, Sharon. So it does seem like employers are continuing, as always, to ask Aaron to simply find the impossible. He only needs to find a miracle worker for every candidate, and then his job will be easy. So to take things down a level, what we're trying to focus on with this particular slide are what we at GLS see that proactive legal departments are focusing on when they're trying to develop their legal team to be successful. So the best legal departments that we've worked on are proactively focusing on enhancing each of these skill sets in their team's lawyers, with a view that if their lawyers can achieve each of these things, then they will be the incredibly successful fire-breathing dragons that everybody knows and loves. So we've called this the future-proof in-house lawyer, because we're saying that these are the skills that are going to enable a lawyer to thrive today and continue to thrive in the future. Of course, the key technical skills are something that's always existed as a basic requirement to get in the door as an in-house lawyer. That is continuing. Everything else on this list needs to build upon that basic technical skill excellence. There is, however, the requirement for organizational skills. You need to be an absolute expert at organizing your in-house legal team, but more often than not, also organizing very chaotic business units that are operating around you on each deal. When we say in-house essential skills, this is partly what we mean. We mean the essential skills of an in-house lawyer to communicate with, develop relationships with, and manage their internal clients. Legal operations skills, as Aaron has pointed out, are more and more often becoming a key focus of every recruitment decision we're involved in when we're looking at recruiting internally within legal departments as to who are going to be the future leaders of that legal department. Are those lawyers able to understand the kind of key basics of legal operations and then implement those basics in an effective way? Sector knowledge, obviously always fantastic to be a bona fide expert in your particular sector. Being able to acquire new knowledge, you need to be able to, well, any in-house lawyer, like any lawyer, does need to be able to rapidly acquire new knowledge. That's probably one of the baselines to the industry in the first place. Transformative skills. Again, this is probably a second, well, this goes hand in hand with the legal operations skills. You basically need to be able to identify the problem, implement a solution, and then demonstrate that that solution has in fact been implemented in a way that your business can recognize. Are you able to demonstrate objectively your impact and that your impact has been a positive one for the business? Technology skills and business acumen, both very new in the legal world that has been traditionally hidden away from being involved in technology of any sort or being involved in any business decisions of any sort. But this is what we see as being quite heavily emphasized by CFOs, COOs, and CEOs when they're talking about who within the legal team is going to be a leader of the future. Now, those first 9 points are education and training products that GLS makes available through its Legal Operations Center. Like, these are training courses, for example, that have been requested for us, and so we've created a product. This 10th item reflects the thing, well, by contrast, this 10th item is the thing that GCs complain to us about the most when they're discussing their legal team. So we want to unpack this 10th item in a bit more detail. What we're saying with that 10th point is that, in essence, with the best will in the world, very few, if any, organizations can provide their in-house legal team with all of the training and all the career planning, etc., required. So if you want to be incredibly successful, you need to proactively take control of your career yourself. This will enable you to stand out amongst your peers who are waiting for this to be done for them. What we're saying is that your company probably will give you some training, but not necessarily all of the training you're needing. They'll probably give you some career planning, but not necessarily optimized career planning for yourself. If there are specific skills that you need to acquire, for example, all the skills on the previous slide, those are things that you can take on board yourself. Now, the good news is, by acquiring those kind of skills, really the most important thing is a proactive decision to do it. These are the kind of skills and the kind of training that requires very little cash outlay. This is not something that requires you to go and sign up for evening classes to do an MBA. These are the kind of skills that you can pick up at any time, and it's more of a question of making a choice to do so. It's also fairly reasonable to expect you to pick up these skills quite quickly compared to other things. So we'll move on to conclusion shortly, but the key takeaway from this presentation that we really want to emphasize is that this list of skills are something that everyone on this call can take on and start developing very quickly. And if you do decide to do so, your career will proceed to a much more impressive outcome. So, to wrap things up, there's irreversible and rapid change within the in-house legal industry. That change seems to be ongoing, and it doesn't seem to be slowing down. We're not quite sure what the new norm of an in-house lawyer will be. That has not yet settled. However, we do at this stage already have some strong insights into the skill sets that will be required by that in-house lawyer. The in-house role is likely to be very holistic and diverse. So it's not acceptable to just be an excellent legal academic or academic lawyer. Hybrid work environments have yet to be fully played out, but seem to be an increasingly required way, increasingly required expectation of the standard in-house legal department. There are huge opportunities available to lawyers to differentiate their career and to seize broader opportunities. We've identified during this presentation a list of key items that you can use to demonstrate that you yourself are a leader and should be treated as such with your career. There are potentially others, but if you start with everything that we've presented today, you'll be in very good shape. Finally, there's a list of skills that need to be adopted by almost every in-house lawyer if they want to have the kind of career that they deserve. And it's your personal responsibility to ensure that you acquire those skills. So I'm going to have a huge thank you to Aaron for giving up his time today and giving us such valuable insights. If you would like to contact Aaron, either to be recruited yourself, or if your legal team needs to recruit a new person, Aaron's contact details on the slide. We'll also be circulating the slide afterwards so that you have them to hand. If you'd like to contact GLS, you can scan these QR codes and they'll enable you to register a free account on the Legal Operations Center. That free account now comes with what's quickly becoming a fairly massive welcome pack full of legal operations, tools, resources, and training solutions. Also, you can visit the Legal Operations Center to book a free consultation for yourself. So, thank you very much. Can I open the floor up to questions? If you do have a question, feel free to just indicate with an open hand, a raised hand. Fantastic. The first one will be from Banda. Banda, I've now allowed you to unmute your mic, but I do require you to unmute it yourself.
Hello, hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much, gents. That was Aaron. That was very good insight and very helpful. I know it's very brief from your side. However, it's very, as I said, it's very helpful. Speaking from my experience, I am based in Saudi Arabia. I'm a Saudi, so I totally agree with what Aaron was saying about the market. It's very competitive now, and things are rapidly moving. My only question to Aaron, and more of a general question, is that there is many companies nowadays. They, as you can see, the market is open for global and international companies to move into Saudi, and I've seen a lot of startups, like they just established their offices in Saudi, and to be honest, from my experience, there is sometimes unrealistic expectations from these companies for general counsels or for legal counsels, and sometimes they are even in some departments, and I've witnessed this, they're alone, so it's one legal in-house, and their expectations is unrealistic. Is sometimes it's with procurement, and it's just it's very difficult for one person to handle the whole thing. From your experience, how is it, what's the optimal way to deal with such a thing? Like, how long does it take? Or do you, like, if a company comes to you and says, we want to recruit an in-house, um, do you have usually a way of asking how many is the team, how many, just to understand, is the workload e- realistic for the, if that's you know Thank you.
Sorry, Aaron, you're actually on mute.
Apologies. There we go. So, all good questions and lovely to meet you. And yeah, your concerns are something that I share. I think the trouble is, okay, if we take the startup aspect, not just in Saudi Arabia but anywhere, it is, everything is thrown at you. I mean, I almost to the point where the job description's meaningless in many respects. So when I do take briefs, I focus on, and certainly if you're going into interviews, it's the vision, it's the scale, it's the size, it's the complexity, because often, what I find with clients, particularly in startup environments, or even major multinationals have been doing it for, they don't know exactly what the lawyer does or where they can add value, and suddenly it just all comes at you. So always be careful with the startup environment, particularly if you're in the statement, because startups by nature, whether it's Saudi Arabia or anywhere in the world, have risk attached to them, and one of those risks is exactly what you're saying. Now, the thing that something that's interesting and may help when you're in-house is being organized is key. Taking responsibility is key. But GE had a course years ago, I don't know if they still do it, which was very good. It was they called it the art of the skillful no. Basically saying no diplomatically and educating in a polite way your stakeholders around you, because they don't, everyone's sales guy wants to sell stuff. He's got his own demands, he's got his own pressures. You've got to engage with them and give them clear timelines, give them clear objectives. If you've got competing demands, for example, explain to them what you've got going on, when they need it by, and set timelines so they know. So there's a number of things there that I could talk to you about for days, which I won't do, of course, and I'm happy to take that offline. But it's challenging, it's tricky, but it's I think it's the questions you ask in interview, it's the vision, it's the expectations, it's getting understanding whether they understand where legal fits in, and then when you're there, managing your time and being clear and communicating and giving timelines and estimates and being transparent with your stakeholders. That sort of saying no when you need to. I hope that helps in some way, Banda, but it's quite a broad question to give you an exact answer, because we could talk about that for days.
I totally agree. I totally agree. Yeah.
I hope that helps in some respect.
It does. It does. It does. I think. Thank. I mean, you have a point there with the saying no is a way of it's not rejecting work as much as it's being realistic in expectations.
Absolutely. I mean, look, just on one last thing. If you go to if you go into a meeting where you've got, I know, a managing director that wants to do something which you just can't do because it's illegal. It happens. People make mistakes, or they don't realize it because of a new regulatory change, whatever. That saying no needs to have a solution with it, and that's the key thing. Sometimes we have to say no, but stakeholders get upset if they can't see a way out, and that's so saying no and find a solution at the same time.
Yeah. Very clear. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Thank you so much, guys.
Yeah, to chip in like another kind of angle at this question, is that's a question that's relevant to individual lawyers, but it's also very pertinent to the operations of the legal department as a whole. And a big issue that we GLS see when we're coming to advise on the legal operations of a department is that the department does not have a clear idea of what exactly is the work that it's doing, how much time each of those different aspects of work are taking up, and who's doing them.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So on the Legal Operations Center, the GLS website, we actually have a number of diagnostics tools to look specifically into that. And it's one of those aspects that lawyers haven't really dealt with properly historically. Historically, it's more been like a kind of finger in the air, kind of anecdotal feeling of what's taking up your time. But very few departments take the time to actually do a proper audit, like an objective audit of real numbers, and then use those numbers to plan how they're going to operate going forward. So if you do find that you're coming across something like that, I can highly recommend that you take that kind of baseline step of doing a scientific study of the workloads that are coming through, and then it makes it that much easier to plan how to deal with those workloads.
Can I just add there? I think that's a good point, Nicholas, and hopefully, I mean, I was doing an innovation seminar a while back, and the key thing that came out is that lawyers are so busy they don't actually have the chance to analyze their desk, as Nicholas is saying. That makes you feel out of control. Now, it does take time, and I would encourage all lawyers at whatever level to map their desk and what they're doing. Is it valuable use of your time? Now, the question then is, what do you do with that data? Now, one general counsel I knew, it was a really simple idea, because he was upset that the CFO didn't think he was adding value to deals. So he put a massive whiteboard outside his office for all the employment litigation that he brought down. Just wrote it on the board. Really simple. He had the average charging out of, if you want to value your time, there's some stats. I'm sure Nicholas and Matt can help. How much does it cost to charge for a law firm to do this matter? your time is saving the business. And he was writing all these stats down. So on a you can do some very basic things that give you more visibility and more control. And yeah, stick it outside the CFO or CEO's window. See what they say when they see the money you're saving them. Because we all of us here on this call will be saving our businesses money through time, risk, litigation, claims, which sometimes the business isn't aware of. Because of course, if there's nothing, if they're not getting any litigation, they don't realize that the benefit they're getting sometimes.
Then Aaron, I will look for a whiteboard. I love the idea.
The biggest one you can find.
Banda, in your efforts, and probably this will be the point that you use to wrap up the presentation as we've reached the hour. Matt has sent me a note to remind me that if you register your free account on the GLS website, you actually get a free audit tool that you can use to audit the operations of your contracting function, i.e. the thing that's probably taking up most of your time. So
Absolutely.
if you want to be able to, well, get the numbers to put on your whiteboard, sign up for that for free, and you'll have it instantly available.
Will do, sir.
And with that,
thank you so much.
with that, thanks again, Aaron, for your time today, and thank you everybody for attending. A copy of this, a recording of this seminar will be available on the GLS website in the next 48 hours, and we'll be circulating a copy of the slides to everyone. So with that, have a fantastic day. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.